Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that something impossible has happened. The Earth has stopped spinning. No gradual slowdown, no warning, our planet simply comes to a halt. At first, you might think that nothing would change. After all, we cannot feel the Earth rotating beneath our feet. But right now, everything on the surface is moving with the planet at enormous speed. Near the equator, the surface of the Earth rotates at roughly 1,670 kilometers per hour. If the planet suddenly stopped, the ground beneath us would come to a halt, but almost everything above it would keep moving. People, cars, buildings, oceans, and even the atmosphere would still carry their momentum eastward. The result would be destruction on a scale humanity has never experienced. Across large parts of the planet, anything that was not firmly anchored would be thrown violently forward. Near the equator, the effect would be most extreme, with speeds comparable to those of a high-performance aircraft. Forests could be flattened. Buildings could collapse. Entire cities might be devastated within minutes as debris races across the surface. But the atmosphere would create an even greater catastrophe. The air surrounding Earth would not instantly stop with the ground. Powerful winds would sweep around the planet at extraordinary speeds. In some regions, they could exceed the strongest hurricanes ever recorded by a huge margin. These winds would carry dust, water, debris, and fragments of human civilization across continents. The first hours after the Earth's sudden stop would likely be among the most destructive events imaginable. And then there are the oceans. The water in the world's seas would also continue moving because of its momentum. Massive waves could sweep across coastlines and far inland. Entire coastal regions might disappear beneath walls of water. Islands could be overwhelmed, and many of the world's largest cities, built near rivers and oceans, would face catastrophic flooding. But even if humanity somehow survived those first hours, the transformation of Earth would only be beginning. Our familiar cycle of day and night exists because the Earth rotates once every approximately 24 hours. Without that rotation, a normal day would no longer exist. The Earth would still continue its journey around the Sun. This means that from the surface, the Sun would appear to move across the sky extremely slowly. Instead of sunrise and sunset every day, many places would experience months of daylight followed by months of darkness. Imagine standing in one location while the Sun remains above the horizon for weeks or even months. Temperatures would steadily rise as the surface absorbs solar energy without the relief of night. Then, as the planet continues along its orbit, the Sun would eventually disappear below the horizon. A long night would begin. Without sunlight, temperatures would fall dramatically. Lakes could freeze, crops would die, and huge regions could become dangerously cold before daylight finally returned. Life would be forced to adapt to an extreme new rhythm, a world of prolonged heat followed by prolonged darkness and cold. Weather would also change completely. Earth's rotation creates the Coriolis effect, which influences the movement of winds and ocean currents. It helps shape many of the weather systems we know today. Without rotation, the atmosphere would behave very differently. The familiar patterns of trade winds, jet streams, and rotating storms would be transformed. Hurricanes as we know them depend on the Coriolis effect to develop their characteristic rotation. But that would not mean the world becomes calm. Instead, enormous temperature differences between the sunlit side and the dark side could drive powerful atmospheric circulation. Winds might constantly transport heat from warmer regions toward colder ones. The oceans would also begin to change shape. Today, Earth's rotation produces a small centrifugal effect that contributes to the planet's equatorial bulge. Our planet is not a perfect sphere, it is slightly wider around the equator. If the Earth stopped rotating permanently, the planet would slowly begin moving toward a more spherical shape. Over very long periods of time, water could redistribute across the surface. Some regions near the equator might lose large amounts of ocean water, while areas closer to the poles could become increasingly submerged. The map of the world would gradually be redrawn. New continents and land bridges might appear where oceans once existed. Other regions could vanish beneath expanding polar seas. Even gravity would feel slightly different. At the equator, Earth's rotation creates a small outward centrifugal effect. Without it, you would weigh just a little more than you do today. The difference would not be dramatic, but it would be measurable. A stopped Earth would literally make you slightly heavier in some parts of the world. Agriculture would face enormous challenges. Most plants evolved around regular cycles of daylight and darkness. Months of continuous sunlight followed by months without the sun would destroy many existing ecosystems. Farmers could no longer depend on familiar seasons. Traditional agriculture in many regions might become impossible without artificial lighting, temperature control, and enormous amounts of energy. Animals that rely on daily rhythms would also struggle. Migration, hunting, sleep, reproduction, and feeding patterns are often connected to the natural cycle of light and darkness. A world without normal days would force life to adapt in ways that are difficult to predict. Humans might survive by moving. Instead of staying in one place, future civilizations could theoretically follow the narrow regions between extreme daylight and darkness, living near a constantly shifting zone of sunrise or sunset. Others might build underground cities, protecting themselves from extreme heat, cold, and powerful weather. Energy would become one of the greatest challenges. Solar power could be extremely effective during the long daylight period, but completely unavailable during the long night. Energy storage on a massive scale would become essential. Civilizations that survived might build global energy networks, transporting electricity from regions in sunlight to those trapped in darkness. But could the Earth ever actually stop rotating? Under natural conditions, there is no realistic process that could suddenly bring the entire planet to a complete stop. Earth contains an enormous amount of rotational energy and angular momentum. The Moon is gradually slowing Earth's rotation through tidal interactions, making our days slightly longer over extremely long timescales. But this process is incredibly slow. Long before Earth could naturally stop rotating in such a way, the Sun and the entire solar system would have undergone dramatic changes of their own. So we do not need to worry about waking up tomorrow on a motionless planet. But this thought experiment reveals something remarkable. The calm ground beneath our feet is not truly still. Every moment of our lives, we are riding on the surface of a planet spinning at tremendous speed while traveling through space around the Sun. We barely notice it. And yet, that invisible rotation shapes our days, our oceans, our weather, our climate, and the world in which life evolved. The Earth does not simply rotate beneath us. Its rotation is part of what makes our planet the world we know. And perhaps the most extraordinary thing is not imagining what would happen if it stopped. It is realizing just how much depends on the fact that it never does. Until the next wonder.